Hi, we're at the range at my house today, so we're going to have to put up with some noises in the background, such as birds chirping, dogs barking, and the highway. Hopefully not any gunfire, because that would mean we're under attack. Now, with that in mind, let's get into today's topic. Today's topic is going to be bullet selection in your load development process. Now, why is that important? Well, if you talk to anybody with any long-range shooting experience or who has developed their own loadings for their rifle in any meaningful volume, they'll tell you that barrels have attitude. And what that means is a barrel will like certain bullets or bullet shapes over another bullet or a different bullet shape. What does that mean? Okay, well, first off, don't ask me that. Number two, what that means is there will be a bullet shape or bullet that shoots out of your firearm with a higher baseline accuracy than all the other bullets out there. Whether that be a hybrid bullet ogive shape or a specific bullet such as a Hornady ELDX or a Berger long range hybrid. One of those bullet or shape combinations will shoot the best out of your firearm, and it could be different for every firearm that you have. So part of your load development process should be taking as many bullets that you have in that caliber and as many different shapes as you have and trying them all through your rifle with the same powder, similar cases, and the same primer to see which one will shoot inherently more accurate than the others. Before you get to this process though, you've already got to have your shooting technique dialed in, because what you want to have is a way to judge that your ammunition is the problem versus your shooting technique. Until you have your shooting technique dialed in, or you have a vise in which you can position your firearm and take the shooter equation out of it, you cannot begin to judge the accuracy or inaccuracy of your reloading process or components. If that makes sense, then let's move forward. If it doesn't, rewind to the beginning and watch it again until it does, because I think that's as good as I can explain it. Now, what do we have before us? We have a Ruger American 16-inch barrel chambered in 6mm arc, and we have a single stage reloading press with a bullet seating die. Now this particular seating die is a Lee 6mm arc with their micrometer adjustment attachment affixed to the top of it. And what it has is little dash marks in here that represent thousandths of an inch. And then I'll bring you a little closer. What you have here is hash marks that represents a decimal of an inch. You have tenths, hundredths, and each individual dash mark on the turret represents 1/1000th of an inch. Again, I hope that makes sense. If it does, let's move forward. If it doesn't, rewind it until it does. Okay, so let's move on to the next portion of our topic. All right, so what you see before you is the 4 spare bullet shapes that I have in 6mm at my disposal. Now, I'm going to be choosing one of these to further the load development on after I figure out which one shoots the most accurate as a baseline. Now, what we have here is the 80 grain ELD VT made by Hornady. We have a Sierra tipped Game King called the Game Changer in 90 grain. We have a 90 grain by Hornady in the ELDX line. And then we have another Hornady 105 grain boat tail hollow point. This is the only match design or match grade bullet in today's representation. So you would bet on this one shooting the best, but it could be one of these depending on the attitude of our barrel. Now that we have today's players lined up, let's move on to the next portion of today's topic. This portion is going to have to do with our load development process, in which we find the proper seating depth for each bullet. Now, there's two ways you can go about it. First, you can look at your hand loading manual or hand loading resource such as Hodgdon or the Sierra manual or Hornady's manual, and it will give you what they used as a cartridge overall length, meaning the tip of the bullet to the base of the cartridge where the primer sets or the ejector grabs it on the bolt face. That overall length is what they used when they were analyzing the powder or bullet in that combination and gave you the data right there in the manual. Now you can take that and move forward, or another thing you can do is to take bullets, seat them long in the cartridge, put them into your chamber, shrink them down in increments to find what fits against the lands of your rifling. If you don't understand what lands and rifling means, or forcing cone or free bore, that information is available online. If I have interest in the comment section, I will do other videos explaining what those are to the best of my ability. Now, the benefit of knowing what fits in your chamber means that your ammunition that you then hand load are going to be bespoke for your rifle, giving your rifle the best chance at accuracy potentially. I say potentially because everything made by man is doomed to fail at one point or another, either at the beginning or at the end. So, take that for what it is. So what we would do in analyzing all four of these bullet shapes, we've now loaded them with all of the same powder, the same similar cases in the same similar condition with the same primer. So all those are the same. The only thing we're changing is the actual bullet itself. So now we need to see what's going to fit in the chamber. The way we do that is in the next portion of our topic. Now for this yes, I did change magazines, and the reason for that is because this magazine allows the bolt to close without a round actually being in it. The other magazines have a bullet stop that is really aggravating to work with. All right, so to begin this process, you'll need preloaded ammunition, a device for measuring. In this case, it is a cheap micrometer that I got from Harbor Freight, and your bullet seating die. Now, you don't have to have it set up on the bench like this, but I did this for demonstration purposes only. So we start with a case that is set to a length of 2.4 inches. This being too long, we can expect this not to chamber. Let's find out. Now, you heard that click. What I did there is just seat the ejector over the lip of the case. Now we can push down on this bolt, and if it closes, then the cartridge fits. But since it's not closing, we know it doesn't. What we're going to do now is we're going to put it into our press, lower the plunger of the seating die until we feel contact, and we're going to shrink its size by 10 thousandths. Punch it in. Put it back in the chamber, onto the feeding ramp, close the bolt. Look at there. Now that closes, but it's a little firm. And if we look right here on the bullet itself, we can see where the rifling is touching the bullet. So I'm going to close that again by 5 thousandths. Push it in. Try it again. Snap. Close the bolt. Still a little firm. Repeat the process, shrinking the overall length by 5 to 10 thousandths per try until that bolt closes nice and easy. That's pretty good. Now that our bolt closes, take a new overall length of this cartridge measurement, and we've got 2.354. Now, interesting fact, a cartridge with an overall length over 2.3 will not fit in a standard magazine. And what I mean by that is if you take a look, you can see that the tip sticks out beyond the edge of the magazine. So even though this now fits in our chamber, it's not going to work for our magazine. These magazines made by Duramag, as far as I'm aware, have the largest cartridge overall length volume to allow for the longest cartridges, period. And they cap out at 2.3. So in order to get these to feed reliably through our magazine, we're going to have to reach that cartridge overall length and give it some room to feed up and down. So now that we know these are 2.354, let's shrink it by 55 thousandths. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, 50, 55. And I'm going to dial in an extra 10 thousandths worth of clearance. All right, so now we've got a cartridge overall length of 2.291, 2.290. It's going to be plus or minus whatever variation is inherently built into this press and the die itself. So let's try our magazine back out. It now just clears the lip of this magazine. So it should go in and out, up and down, and feed reliably in the bolt. Let's try our chamber again. Nice and smooth. You say to yourself, well, why didn't you just try the magazine length to begin with? Well, because I wanted to know how much clearance I have between this bullet ogive and the forcing cone or the lands of this barrel. In this case, this bullet shape here is going to be jumping about 65 thousandths. Information is information. Now we can take the rest of these that we have preloaded, run them through this die, and they will all go out to that same length, fit in our magazine, chamber in our barrel, and we know how much they're jumping. Is jumping or knowing bullet jump important? I don't know. Only you can answer that. But this is a way to know this. Now, you can take and mark this die setting down in your notes, and every time you load this bullet, you can go back to this seating depth position and load ammunition exactly like you had it beforehand. Say, for instance, you have a bullet shape like this one. This is the 90 grain ELDX. I assume that this one is going to have to be under magazine length before it fits into the chamber, but let's find out. So we're going to put it into the barrel just like before. Attach the extractor, try to close the bolt, doesn't close. All right, let's shrink it by 10. Seat it, check it. Doesn't close. Shrink it by 10. Seat it, check it. Seat it, check it. All right, so we just now got it to close a little bit. So we're touching our lands, and we're getting to where we can close the bolt. Let's do another 10 thousandths. Try it again. All right, so that closes well. Now, we know this closes. We know we're real close to the lands. But had we loaded it to magazine length, we would have been, so this measures 2.258, so we would have been 30 thousandths jammed into the lands had we just loaded this to magazine length. That's why you have to test every bullet. Whereas our Sierra Game King would have been 50 thousandths away from the jam or rifling point at magazine overall length. This would have been down the throat, jammed into the rifling by 30 thousandths at the same cartridge overall length. So testing your bullet fitment into your barrel is important. Now, we're shorter than magazine length, so that's not going to be our dictating spec. We're at the rifling at 2.258, 2.260. Now, what I like to do at this point is I like to dial in a minimum of 25 to 30 thousandths clearance before my jam to give the bullet some run-up speed before it jams into the rifling, preventing pressure spikes in my mind. So now that I know that this die setting, that die setting is now our jam, I'm going to dial in 30 thousandths. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Bang. Now what I've done is I've just provided this bullet with 30 thousandths clearance to the lands. Cartridge overall length, 2.230. So now we can go through and set all of these. Now, how about an AR platform? I'm glad you asked. An AR platform is much the same. It has a bolt, it has a chamber, it has riflings, it has certain dimensions. Let's take some of our bolt action ammunition and see if it fits in our AR rifle. Manually close the bolt, seat the extractor, bump it forward. Bolt closed, it fits. Cycle it out. There we go. We've got 2 more bullet shapes that have not been formed to a chamber. So let's move to the next one in line. This is the 105 grain boat tail hollow point from Hornady. There's the extractor, and the bolt will not close. Let's dial in 5, 10, 15 to start. Seat the extractor, bump it forward, bolt won't close. Another 10 thousandths. Rinse and repeat. Still doesn't fit. Still doesn't fit. There we go. Finally got her to snap. So now that our bolt's closed, we know we're right there at the lands. We're either touching it, just before touching it, or slightly jammed in. The bolt closes, that's our starting point. So what we're gonna do now is we're gonna dial in an additional 30 thousandths clearance. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. Dial that in. Check our magazine length. It fits. Write down our die setting and move forward. Now notice I didn't take a cartridge overall length, period. So you don't actually have to know what it is. As long as it fits in your barrel, fits in your magazine, and you know how to get back to it with your die setting, cartridge overall length is irrelevant. Now that's gonna blow some of your minds, and you're not gonna like it, but it's true. Think about what knowing the cartridge overall length of this bullet now is. What's that gonna do for me? I know how much the jump is. I dialed it in myself based on what fit in the chamber. I know it fits in the magazine. So why do I need to know the cartridge overall length? If you still need to know, pick up your caliper and measure, write it down. Now that we've got these dialed in though, I'm gonna go ahead and seat these, do a measurement that fits in the gun, and move on to the next shape. Now some might say, well, why don't you just leave that die measurement and seat every bullet to that as a baseline? Well, if you don't know the answer to that, rewind the video, go back and find the information that'll clarify that for you. Last bullet shape. Gonna go through this process one more time. Absurdly long. We know it's not gonna fit. Verify. Seat the extractor, bump it shut, doesn't fit, shrink it until it does. There we go. Bolt closes. Let's dial in 30 thousandths clearance. 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. All right. So to recap what we've done, we have found out die settings that will allow each one of these bullet shapes to chamber in our firearms with a set amount of clearance or magazine fitment length. What this does for us is it streamlines the reloading process in the future. I hope you enjoyed today's program. I hope it was informative. I hope I didn't step on too many toes. If I did, rewind the video, rewatch it until it makes sense and you agree. Join me next time where we take these loads downrange and decide which bullet we're going to move on with in the future. As always, try this at home if you want to. I can't tell you what to do. I am by no means a professional. And thank you for watching.